What is up, all of my beautiful freaking people? Welcome back to another episode of FMLTalk. Today is a special one for me because someone who has known me from the day I entered this lovely planet is here to join me. She is a film and television writer who is now an incredible author. Jayne Martin is joining us on FMLTalk today, and it's a wild one. We touch on it all. So sit back, grab a fucking cocktail, and welcome to FMLTalk.
Oh my God. Wait, how old was the other girl?
19. Can you believe that shit?
Hey, this is Gabrielle Stone.
Good book?
He did what? 48 hours?
What a dick.
Yeah, but have you seen all the photos on her Instagram?
And this is FMLTalk.
Oh, no, she didn't.
Y'all know I love a good self-love cocktail and occasionally an actual cocktail. I have always notoriously hated the taste of alcohol and needed it disguised in a good mixology cocktail until I discovered Neft. Because Neft is a premium vodka in its purest form with non-GMO rye, it has a light taste full of character. Not only is Neft one of the best tasting vodkas I've ever had, it also comes in the cutest packaging I have ever seen. Their unbreakable barrel keeps it chilled for up to 6 hours, making it the perfect drink to take just about anywhere. Join me in adding a little actual cocktail into your self-love cocktail with Neft vodka. Cheers! You guys, I'm so excited. Jayne has known me since I popped out onto this planet and has watched me grow up. She knew my father very well, is a dear, dear friend of my mother's, and she wrote this incredible book called the Daddy Chronicles. And I knew as soon as she sent it to me that I not only wanted to share the book with you all, but I wanted you to really get to know her, hear her story, and that it was a really interesting topic for her and I to dig into on the show, because so many times the father figures in our lives play such a big role, whether that is in a positive light or a negative light. And Jayne and I both have daddy issues, you can say, but they are very different, but they both manifested themselves in similar ways throughout our adult life, both with sex and with relationships, and we're going to talk about it all. So let's dive in to this episode of FML Talk. Jayne Martin, welcome to FML Talk.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm excited to be here.
So this is a special episode for me because, I mean, you've literally known me since I was born.
Since you popped out.
Like the day.
The day.
Out of mom's vagina.
Out of mom's vagina.
Fresh to the world.
Right out of the oven, a head full of black hair.
Oh my God, I love it. Black hair.
It was black.
That's true. I mean, I've seen the baby pictures, but like,
Yeah.
Odd.
I don't know.
Odd.
I don't know. Your
Not
dad,
that I'm a natural blonde. I'm not, but like I'm like a light brunette.
well, babies, they come out with weird colors. Who knows?
Right,
But you
right.
came out, you had this dark little hair. And
I
you,
love it.
You were adorable.
And you also, a lot of people have come on the show that know my mom in some capacity. No one that's known my dad. So this is really cool in that sense.
He was a good friend to me.
Yeah.
A very good friend.
Yeah. And I only obviously knew him up until being a 6-year-old little girl. I wish I would have gotten to know him as an adult, because so many people that know him say how much I'm like him as far as like my sarcastic humor and like my boldness in different ways.
He was hysterical, and we loved to needle each other.
Yeah.
We would do it all the time, and your mom would come in the room and say, "Will you stop fighting?" And we would just look at her like, "We're not fighting.
We're joking.
This is just how we relate to each other."
Oh, I
no,
love
he was
that.
a really, really a great guy. Well, see, you lost your dad at around the same age. Well, no, your dad was there for you. He adored you.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah. Similar, losing feeling, but different experience.
yeah, it's still abandonment.
Oh, yeah.
It's still like,
Yeah. So why don't you take me back to your relationship with your dad when you were young?
I have no memories. I have little flashes, like acid flashbacks, little flashes. But I actually have no memory of my life before I was about 6 years old, because they were divorced. They were, and they would try to reconcile. And so I would go to bed in San Francisco and wake up in Oregon, and then wake up in Montana, and then wake up someplace else, and then of course it wouldn't work, and we'd come back to San Francisco to my grandmother, and so he was in and out, but it must have made enough of impression on me, that I was always looking for him. I was always wondering when he was going to come back. Right. But he didn't. But they had been together for about 15 years. They met when she was 17 and he was 27. And when I was born, he was 42. Oh. So he hadn't signed on for this. He liked the gambling life, the drinking. He did drugs. And when my mom got pregnant with me, she came home. She couldn't be around that. Yeah. And then, none of the reconciliations worked. So he just really didn't sign on for that. And so I don't have memories of him. I have one picture of him kneeling down with me in a park, and he's in a suit, and he's holding on to me, and I'm kind of squinting into the sun. He doesn't look particularly comfortable, but I have the picture. Yeah. And but that's it. I have the only other memory I have of him is seeing him again when I was about 14, and he came back into our lives. My mom was divorced from my stepfather, and all the fantasies that I had built up around my father, he was Prince Charming, he was this, he was that. He was none of those things. And he still didn't want me. I still don't remember. I never remember him hugging me. And
but so he was in your life when you were younger?
When I was a teenager for a brief amount of time. Okay. And he came back. He didn't come back to us. He didn't live with us, but he came back to the town where we lived. And it turns out he was sick, and he basically came back because he wanted to die near my mother. But no, he never really wanted to interact with me then either.
So you and your mother and your father were together for a while before you were born. Yeah,
they were probably together for 15 years.
And happy.
And I'm assuming very happy.
So, and then you were born.
And then I, the interloper, came along.
So it really was like, in your eyes and in my eyes, just from hearing the story, that you were born and he was like, nope, this is a deal breaker.
Nope, this is a deal breaker.
That's fucking horrible to feel that way as a daughter.
Yeah, because you go through life trying to be good enough. In every relationship, I'm just going to try to be good enough. If I'm good enough, then this person will love me. Yeah. And it's a pattern of constantly going after emotionally unavailable men. Yeah. Very charismatic, very bigger than life. Not that he was, but he was in my mind. Right. And, but always emotionally unavailable. So there was nothing I could tap dance as fast as I could, and it wasn't going to make any difference. Yeah. So that became the pattern.
The pattern that you started attracting when you started dating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I can remember as far back as 7th grade having crushes on the popular boys and dreaming about them, and they never knew who I was, but it started a pattern. Yeah. Yeah.
So when your dad came back when you were in high school, what was that interaction with him like?
We went to, I wrote about it in the book. We went to the place, I didn't know where we were going, and we went to this place where I was going to meet my father, and I got all dressed up, and it was just a shoe store, and he was a shoe salesman, and he didn't hug me. He didn't. I don't remember much about the interaction except that I wanted him to hug me. And he didn't. I just remember he went to my mother, and I was kind of along. And I don't have really many more memories from that time, except I think we saw him a couple of more times. I remember he used to let me borrow his car that I thought was so cool, but really he just wanted to get rid of me so he could be with my mom. So it's
God,
he's
that's like devastating.
he's
to-
like this phantom,
yeah.
you know? And so I spent my life trying to get my father to love me through other men.
But so it must have been so horrible to feel like, well, he still clearly wants to be around my mom and he still clearly loves my mom.
Uh-huh.
What's so wrong with me that he made me and doesn't want to be around me?
You know, we're all wired with our shit. And God only knows how he was wired, or, you know, because I didn't know him or his family. You can't give what you don't have. And I went to a psychic once, and the psychic, and I write about this in the book too, so I won't say too much about it, but the psychic said, "Oh, your dad is coming through." And I remember saying, "Well, tell him to go away. I don't need to hear from him. Don't take up my time. I'm paying for this time. Go away." And the psychic said, "No, he just wants you to know that he knows what he missed." And that was really sort of profound for me. And it kind of started me on a road to forgiveness. Didn't, you know, the wounds were pretty hardwired there, but where I could, okay, I took a picture of him out of the trunk that my mother had, and I put the picture up, and I put their wedding picture up, and I started to go, well, you know, he just didn't have it in him. And I just started to forgive. But
we talk a lot about forgiveness on this show, and I did an episode all around forgiveness, and people either really resonated with it or really pulled back from it. Because obviously you think about some of the horrible things that people do in our world, and you're like, they don't fucking deserve forgiveness. And yeah, of course not. Like there's people that do awful things. And I think what people miss is that the forgiveness isn't for the other person.
no.
Forgiveness is for you.
It is. It's so that you can go on. And so I basically said, well, you know, he gave me life, and I'm healthy, and I'm strong, and I'm smart, and I'm accomplished, and a lot of, who knows what was in his genes. I must have something there that was good that he gave me. And I'm grateful for how my life turned out. And he, you know, and he did miss a lot. So I could, you know, that's the adult in kind of intellectualizing. You know, the child inside is still saying, wait a minute, I'm still hurt.
Yeah.
I'm still hurting. So, you know, you go on and you do your forgiveness thing, but, you know, I've still got some issues down here.
Yeah. And understandably so. I mean, that's a really painful thing. You know, my dad dropped dead of a heart attack, and that's awful and terrible, but he didn't choose to abandon me. He didn't choose to leave me. That's very different than having someone be like, no, I know you're here. I know you exist. I'm choosing not to be around you.
Yeah.
That's really heartbreaking.
But even so, Gabrielle, as a child, when you found your dad, you know now that he didn't choose to leave
Right,
you.
but your
all the
6-year-old
says is,
Yeah.
Daddy left.
Yeah.
You
Dad
know?
abandoned me. Dad
Yeah.
left.
And so
Yeah.
that's in there too.
Yeah, definitely. So when you started dating and bringing men into your life, they were all emotionally unavailable.
Pretty much. Occasionally, what I call a cosmic fluke would occur. And I had a great boyfriend in high school who was in a band, and you know, we were together for, I don't know, 8 or 9 months or so. Eventually, he broke up with me, and I obsessed over him for several years trying to get him back. Because he was emotionally unavailable. I had to have him.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I liked him even more now. You know? And then the first guy that I went to bed with was married. He was...
The guy you lost your virginity to?
Mhm.
Did you know he was married?
Yes, I did.
Ooh, Jayne.
I was 19 and he was...
Oh my God, you're always 19. They're
I'm
always 19.
I was 19 and he was, God, he was at least 10 years older than I was. And, you know, he was a disc jockey and I worked at the station and so he was somebody else's husband and somebody else's father. And
emotionally
and
actually unavailable. Yeah.
But we did have a reasonably long fling, and I did, you know, keep fantasizing about him leaving his wife, which any of these would have been a disaster. So yeah, that's how. And then I think when I was around 23, another cosmic fluke, and I met a guy on a movie set who was the Grip. I think they had Grip, and he loved me, and we ended up moving to LA together, and I started to sabotage the relationship almost immediately because it freaked me the hell out.
Yeah. How did you sabotage? What were you doing?
Well, the first thing I did that I remember was that I told him, I mean, we had barely unpacked, and I remember telling him that I don't think I love you. So, it was like I just kept pulling back, and of course, eventually he left, and why wouldn't he?
Right.
But I had no frame of reference for a real intimate relationship like that, and it panicked me.
Yeah.
It scared me. And through most of my life, whenever there was the possibility and a guy liked me, I could feel my heart just go, run away, run away. We don't know about this one. I was raised in a family of mostly women and strong women. And the men they were divorced, they were gone, they were dead, they were weak, whatever, they were gone. And so I didn't have a frame of reference of a relationship.
Yeah.
And, when one of the things that I discovered as I was kind of doing some research on this, by the way, there was a really, really good show that Oprah did, and it's on YouTube, and it's on Fatherless Daughters. And I watched it, and I looked out in the audience, and they were all talking about things that I could relate to.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, there's a bunch of us.
Oh yeah. I remember one of my birthdays, it was like just my close girlfriends. There was, I think, 4 of us there, and we were, having wine and waiting for my mom to bring dinner out because she wanted to do like an at-home birthday that year. And I looked around the table and I was like, all of us have fucking daddy issues. And like everybody looked at each other and we were like, yep. Mine's dead, yours is divorced, yours is an asshole, yours is a deadbeat. Like it was literally like all of us had attracted each other and we're sitting there and I was like, well, guess we know the common denominator that brought everybody to party tonight.
Yeah, so that became the pattern, and using sex to get love. It's very, promiscuity is very common because, when you're being held, you can call that love. When I was growing up, women had, if you're going to have sex, you better be in love. That was, that was sort of it. So that was, wow, in my favor too. So I attached love to every sexual involvement, and used sex to get what I thought or called love.
Yeah.
At least for the moment.
I so resonate with that. And in the second book, The Ridiculous Misadventures, I have this revelation that I have been using sex to protect myself from being abandoned. So if I can use this as like a tool to get people to come close to me, then I feel better about it, and then I'm in control and then I can be the one to walk away. Yeah. And I know that so many people that not only that have dad issues, that I think the sexual issues can stem from so many places, but I know it definitely does come from, people that have had interesting pasts with their fathers, to really make it not as important as it should be. Like sex, for me at least, became less important. It was like, if I don't attach a really important meaning to this act that's supposed to be so sacred and so special, if I make it not that important, then I won't be as hurt.
And I used it to attract love because maybe if I have sex with this guy, he'll love me. And so that's...
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so do you think that your definition of love was toxic and wrong?
Oh, yeah.
You equated it with sex? Because obviously, like, you can get any fucking person to hop into bed with you for the most part. Like, that has nothing to do with them loving you.
I know, but for them, yeah, but I could create a whole fantasy relationship.
Like a narrative.
Yes, around it.
Like the narrative you created with your father.
Yeah.
There it is,
yeah.
ladies and
And
gentlemen.
they were almost always, like the rock star, the movie star, they were mostly really bigger than life kind of men, and
Yeah.
there was like not going to happen. But yeah, that's what I did. So the menopause was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Because your sex drive just tanked?
It just tanked. And I think, I just have to imagine God looking down going, oh, shit, I can't watch this anymore. I got to
Send her an early menopause.
I got to take that thing away.
Oh,
'cause
my
this
God,
is-
Jane, I cannot.
This is bad. But yeah, but when I kind of lost my sex drive and really never made an effort to get it back because I stopped putting my energy so much into trying to get a man to love me. And I turned my energy kind of into creating a life that I would love and being really not needing that outside gratification. I really focused on the stuff that I loved, and I got horses. I always loved horses, and I got, my riding career took off, and I turned it into, I guess you talk about self-love. I just took the energy that I had been throwing out there and kept it and banked it. Yeah. And I was no longer so driven and so angst-ridden, and
Yeah.
that was when I hit my 40s. And once I hit my 40s, man, life took off. Life became great. And I still regard, unfortunately, men as toxic. I don't trust them. I don't like to be around them.
All men?
Primarily until I kind of get to know them.
Wow.
I love gay men. Gay men are great.
I love gay men
Who
too.
doesn't love gay men?
Yeah.
But I don't trust them, and I choose not to be
Wow.
around them if I don't have to, or unless they're like husbands or friends or colleagues,
Yeah.
workers, something like that I know aren't going to come on to me and put me in an uncomfortable position.
Oh, wow.
But I
Jane.
don't, honestly, I wasn't raised around men. They're not just a different gender. They're a whole different species to me. I don't get it.
That's
I
so
wish I'd been
interesting.
gay. God, why wasn't I gay? Because I love
I feel like a lot of women wish that
I-
at one point or another.
I get women. I understand us, but them.
Well, so, okay, do you think, because that doesn't come, that belief and, would you call it a fear? Uncomfortability?
Yeah.
Belief that
it's
men
a
are
real-
toxic and uncomfortable.
Yeah, and on that, but I do have, several good male friends, that I've known over time and have
Right.
built up the trust in the
trust.
relationship. But my first impulse is going,
Yeah. But do you think that's not because your dad wasn't there? That's because of the pattern of you going after the emotionally available men and them
but it
being
starts
emotionally
with
unavailable.
with not being able to trust men, and I couldn't trust my father.
Right.
There was no trust there.
Right.
So I just started I have real trust issues.
Yeah. So let's go back to the sex for a second. Because you and I share something similar that I've worked to get over in my recent adult years, is that sex for me was always very performative.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, it didn't matter if I was going to have an orgasm.
Yes.
But I looked like a fucking porn star and everybody was really enjoying the situation, except for me. And I think that had to do with the whole, if I bring someone close and I have this performative experience, then they will love me, and in turn I will not be abandoned, which is so fucking like screwed up in the noggin. Let's just start with that. We know this is fucking twisted shit.
It is.
But so many people go through this because so many people have read it in my book and have DM'd me and been like, bitch, you just changed my life. So I know so many people do it. So what was it for you that you always felt like it had to be performative?
Well, it was the same thing as, I'll tap dance as fast as I can. I'll do whatever I can to really get you off and get you hot, and you'll want me. You'll want me. Of course, you'll want to come back. You'll want me.
Right.
And so that's, it's so, it is twisted.
It's a cycle.
It's so mixed up.
Yeah.
So obviously, I never wanted to fuck my father, although, the married guy was a father. But it wasn't that. It was just, I'll wear the slinky, sexy lingerie. I'll wear the garter belt. I'll do all the, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
God, my ex-husband really left. If he left any imprint on me, it was like a fucked up sexual experience. Because he would want me to dress up in this like insane lingerie, and he would go shop for it, and it was just like my lingerie collection by the end of my marriage was fucking insane. And then on top of that, there were times because like I'm a dancer, I grew up as a dancer, and like I can move, and I part of being a dancer is you can dance sexy. And he would want me to come home and would go to the ATM and get 100 ones and want me to dance for him while he threw money at me. And at the time, I'm like, oh, this is like something that is like kind of, sexy. Okay, sure. And now looking back on it, I'm like, fucking ew, dude.
Yeah.
Like, what were you ever doing for my pleasure? Let's start with that issue and then go on to the fact that like, you wanted to make our home a strip club. If people are into that, then like, that's fine, to each their own. Like I'm all here for some blindfolds and some handcuffs when appropriate, but like it was a consistent thing that he wanted like all the time. And you look back on it and you're like, now the Tay, who's my boyfriend now, is like, why are you going to fucking put lingerie on? It's just going to come off. Like, let's just get in bed and let's start with you. And I'm like, oh, interesting switch of dynamic here.
Yeah. It's like, you're enough.
Yeah.
You're enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you sat down to write this book, The Daddy Chronicles, what were you expecting to write? And what ended up happening? Like, what's the different stuff that came up for you during this writing process?
Well, I call it the accidental memoir because I did not think about it or plan that I was going to write it, but I knew that I wanted my next book to be a collection of linked stories. And I do a lot of workshops online, work with other writers. And I did a workshop, and there was this prompt, and it was a photo of a woman kind of dressed in this sort of slinky dress, and she's sort of passed out, and there's a drink there and a cigarette in her hand in this chair. And I looked at her and I thought, I think she's waiting for her married lover who didn't come again, who left her, didn't show up. And so I wrote that story. I could relate to that. But I thought, oh, this is just fiction. I'll just write this story. And then I got, was doing another workshop, and the prompt was write about your first love. I thought, what's everybody's first love is your daddy. Well, this story came to me about a baby in a playpen in a living room with the guy who's her father, and the baby's trying to get the attention, and the father keeps turning the television up louder and louder. So I had these two stories, and I thought, well, oh my God, this woman who's waiting for her married lover, that was the baby. These are the same characters.
Right.
And they're me.
Yep. Ding, ding, ding.
I know. And then I remembered my grandmother had told me a story once. My grandmother hated my father, about coming into the living room. I guess one time he was there, don't know where my mom was, and finding me in my playpen, screaming, crying, with a wet diaper, and he was just watching television.
Oh, my God. And, it's a horrible story to hear, but what people don't realize is that you as that baby, whether or not you remember that memory or not, I'm sure you don't, your fucking cellular level does.
Oh, yes.
And that shit is that's trauma trapped in your body that has not gone anywhere. So
Yep.
even when you're like, kumbaya, fucking forgiveness as, an adult woman, that little baby is inside of you going, bitch, the fucking television is still turned up to 100.
Yeah.
And I am in a wet fucking diaper and I'm not fucking happy about it. And that shit lives in you.
It does. The body doesn't forget.
Yeah.
So I had these two stories and I thought, oh my God, the connective tissue. And I remember saying to my friend, if I go down this road, I'm not going to be able to turn back. And my friend, who's also a writer, said, go down the road. You got to go down the road.
Yeah.
And I began to write the book and pick up. My memory started when I was really about 6. And each story is really just a page. It's a scene. And I tried to capture my voice as my voice aged to about the age of 40. And it just poured out. It was like the universe said, yeah, I've been waiting for you to get to this. And the book pretty much wrote itself. It was the first rough draft was done in a month.
Yeah.
And I had the structure, and what came up for me was a lot of fucking anger that I thought I had dealt with. And I was so surprised, and I found myself crying on some pages. And, it was that child saying, yeah, I'm still hurt. I know you're doing well. I know, mazel tov, you made a great life for yourself, but I'm still in here hurting, And so what I realized is that for me, healing is a lot about adapting and acceptance. It's not, Jesus placing his hand on the head of a cripple and, Lord, I walk.
Right.
That shit's always going to be in there. And sometimes it will be triggered. But I can look at it now and go, okay, that's an old tape. Or I can look at it now and kind of soothe the child inside me. Mm-hmm. And realize that there are things that I am never going to be able to have and do. I will never have a happy, loving, intimate relationship with a man. Fortunately, I no longer want one, but there was a long time in my life, and I just have to go, okay, I didn't get that. A greater disappointment is that I didn't get a singing voice. I always wanted to be a singer. I watch the Tonys. I see them on Broadway. I belt the tone, but I'm tone deaf. So really, that's a greater disappointment. But I kind of will rationalize it. I'll go, okay, you didn't get a singing voice either, but you got this and you got this, and look at what a great life you've made for yourself, and you're very, very happy. Mm-hmm. Now, who knows if he had stayed in the picture, what my life would have turned out to be. Maybe it would have been great. A lot of people have wonderful fathers, and their life still turns out to be shit.
Yeah.
So whatever he gave me through his sperm, I've got to take and be grateful for, and know that this is what I got. I didn't get that. Everybody has their shit. And, I've made a really happy life.
Yeah. Okay, I have to ask, because you are best friends with my mother,
Mm-hmm.
who is a world healer.
Mm-hmm.
And if I ever sat across from her and was like, because of what I've been through, all men are fucking toxic. Fuck them. I'm never going to have a fucking relationship ever again. She'd be like, bitch, sit down. We're going to do some work.
Well, that's
so I can't imagine that you guys have not had massive discussions about
yeah,
this.
she knows who I am.
Well, I know she knows who you are, but does she have like anything to say about the belief that is still there?
No, she knows better than that.
Oh my God. She's like, she knows not to fucking ask me and try and heal me.
She knows I'm not going to change at this point in my life.
My God, Jayne.
Nor do I want to. I mean, this is who I became. I'm happy with who I became. I've got the baggage. It'll always be there. And, it's like people are born without an arm, They manage to have a good life. They adapt, they adjust. They don't grow an arm. So, it's not a pity party. I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I I got what I got.
Yeah.
And, and I made a life for myself. I took the pieces and I made a life for myself. That's, really terrific.
Yeah. Can you look back on what did you call them? The cosmic
flukes.
The cosmic flukes.
I can.
Can you look back on those men and be like, oh, wow, he really did love me and he was a good person and a good guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my God, the guy that I moved to LA with, he used to send me cards all the time. He'd leave little notes on our answering service, because there were answering services back then. And the women would giggle and say, Bob said to say he loves you.
Oh.
And, I just, I didn't know how to deal with that. He was lovely. We were together for about 8 months. And then he really didn't like LA and he left. He asked me if I wanted to go with him. I'm sure he pretty much knew I would say no. But yeah, I tried my best to be June Cleaver, to be all the moms I'm seeing, I could get dinner on the time, I could do this, I do that or the other. But I just didn't know. I didn't know how to do it.
No, and that's not who you were.
My mother had a very toxic relationship with my stepfather, and there was a lot of fighting and a lot of, demands made on him that shouldn't have been, and I was very disrespectful to him, and that was a horrible relationship. He was a very good, kind, loving man, and he adored my mother. But, my mother couldn't make that work. She was always still in love with my father, I think, and she married him to try to give me a home.
Right.
So when they broke up, I carried that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of...
I got to carry that one. You did it for me.
A lot of traumas and all centered around men.
All centered around men.
Yeah. So after the anger came up in the book, once you finished it and you look at it now, what do you feel like you've gained from it?
Well, a lot of scenes and memories came up that I had forgotten, but once I started to write, they surfaced. And I think I just have been able to put him sort of to rest, kind of soothe the child enough. And I can look at the stuff that came up and just go, yeah, it happened, but it doesn't need to run my life.
Yeah.
And I do forgive him. I do know that he had addiction problems. He had all the shit that he had, and he just didn't have it to give.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I can stand back and kind of look at it from a distance and not dwell on it. But I felt like when I started reading about all the other women who had had similar experiences, because I had thought, well, why would I write this? Who would care about my experience? And then
so many people.
And then to realize that so many people had the same things happen to them, the same issues. And I really recommend the Oprah YouTube show on fatherless daughters.
Yeah,
because
I want to check that out.
I listened to all those women in the audience and pour out what the kind of performances they did for men to make them love men.
Right.
So many similar things. And I thought, well, I'll write it and I'll put it out there. And at least I've done it. I've got it out of my body on paper where I can look at it and it's not as scary anymore.
Yeah.
I
love that.
So.
And it's available for pre-order now, which is very
exciting. It's available for pre-order now.
And where can people find that?
Amazon. You can go to the publisher, Whiskey Tit. Isn't that great?
Shut up.
That's my publisher.
Wait, that's... I'm so not about the publishing life. I'm a self-publisher girl, but if I was ever going to go with one, it would be Whiskey Tit.
Whiskey Tit Books. So you can go to their website, but really, or any indie that you want to go to.
Yeah, and we'll post it on our social media.
Yeah,
too.
So yeah, it is available.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful book.
Thanks. The cover, I found that picture of me as a little girl, in my mom's old album. I must have been 7 years old, and I'm just holding my dress out. And I thought, why didn't Daddy love her? She was really cute. But that's the cover.
Yeah. And I think what I've taken away from hearing your story and in this episode is like, yeah, why didn't Daddy love her? But you now love her.
I
And
love
that's
her.
such a fucking gift.
I love her, and I don't ignore her. If she's coming up hurting and I can feel that, I'll honor that.
Yeah.
And, say you're all right. You're okay.
Yep.
It all turned out okay.
Yeah.
And it did. And I wouldn't trade my life now for anything.
I love that.
So,
Oh my God. Everybody go pick up a copy of the Daddy Chronicles. Jayne, thank you so much for being here.
thank you.
This was wildly
This
special
was
for me.
wonderful. Super
Yay.
fun. Super fun.
Love you.
Love you, baby girl.
Yay. I want to thank Jayne so much for coming on and talking about all the things with me. And I want to remind you guys that are watching this, obviously you've seen me go through hell, heartbreak, and all the fucking bullshit that life has thrown at me. And Jayne has been through her own version of the ringer. And we ended up in very different ends of the spectrum, with the way that she now views men and wants to keep them at a distance and is happy and thriving by herself. And I love that. I do want you guys to know that there is a different side of that. I found my person. I fully believe that there are amazing and incredible men out there. We have had so many on this show this season. So I really hope that you can see that there are so many different avenues that you can thrive in this life. Before we close out today, I want to read you guys a little excerpt of Jayne's book, The Daddy Chronicles, because I think it is so special, and I really encourage you guys to go out and grab a copy. This excerpt is titled, "And Then He Is Gone." When Daddy leaves us for the last time, he wears a blue pinstriped suit with a freshly pressed handkerchief in his chest pocket, a fedora hat, and black Oxfords that shine like new pennies. Tall, oh so handsome, he looks just like one of those movie stars that smile out from the covers of magazines Mommy keeps on her vanity. My small hands press against the window. I draw a heart with my finger in the circle of my breath as I watch him carry his suitcase across the busy city street, growing smaller with each step he takes away from us. The bell of a cable car rings out as it passes by, and then he is gone. Never having turned, never seeing me still waving long after he disappears. My heart melts and slides down the glass. For weeks after that, I still ask, when is Daddy coming home? He had left us before. Left and came back. Left and came back. Upon each return, I would run into his arms, his embrace short and stiff, but enough for me to breathe in his scent, cloves and pine, capturing it in my memory like a firefly in a mason jar. You knew he wasn't a family man when you married him, my grandmother says to my mother. But she is looking at me, and though I didn't know what family man means, I see Mommy turn her head to hide her tears. When Daddy comes back, I'll be such a good girl. Such a good girl, I say. My tummy starts to hurt, and I crawl up into Daddy's chair, my bare legs sticking to the leather, my tiny bottom trying to fill the space left by his, and wonder what I could have done to make him stay. Whew, I bet that hit home for a lot of you guys. This book is filled with really powerful, really incredible stories, and I urge you to go pick up a copy and see what it brings up in you and the different ways that it can help you heal any of those old daddy issues that we've got going on. Next week, you guys, I have been excited to release this episode since we recorded it. JD McCabe is joining us to give us a little insight on the crazy women in the world. And this story, y'all, is one for lifetime. I mean, My jaw was on the floor the entire time we were shooting this episode and I was hearing this story. He wrote an incredible book about his experience, but the story itself doesn't seem real. I cannot wait for you guys to hear this episode. Keep up with us on Instagram at FMLTalk Podcast for all the behind-the-scenes goodies and the fun giveaways that we have. If you need more FML content, you can join us on patreon.com/FMLTalk. There are multiple seasons of mini bonus episodes where all the tea ends up. You also get access to the private Facebook group and 10% off all of your merch. You can watch the episodes live in studio this season on youtube.com/FMLTalk. I will see you guys next week, and as always, have a self-love cocktail on me. Cheers.